Good morning and thanks for joining. Welcome to AgriVista's webinar for remote sensing with Hummingbird Technologies. I'm Graeme Barrett, one of AgriVista's decision support specialists, and will chair today's webinar. Today, Hummingbird will be discussing the uses of remote sensing for this autumn and how this data can be used for precision farming applications. We'll start with Helen Keevil, who will introduce us to Hummingbird as a company and explain a bit about the platform's features. And then Louise Ricks and Andrew Paynes will demonstrate some of the features on the platform. We'll end with questions and answers. So if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to put them in the chat at the side of the window. I shall now hand over to Helen.
Perfect. Thank you, Graeme. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining this webinar. As Graeme's already highlighted, we're going to do an introduction to Hummingbird and then run through platform features and products and services to use for this autumn. If you have any questions as we run through, please do pop them in the chat on the right-hand side, and we can address all of those at the end. So, who is Hummingbird and what do we do? Hummingbird is a data analytics company. We've been around since 2016. We're a British startup, and we now have a wide range of product services across multiple geographies around the world, looking at a very wide variety of crops. We use a range of remote sense data and analytics, and we really specialize in high resolution data analytics, providing insights and management tools to clients and agronomists, allowing them to benchmark farm and crop performance and to generate a wide range of variable rate application plans. Some of our company aims are to be able to provide data to give greater insights in crop production, allowing you to make more data-driven informed management decisions. We provide variable rate application files to precision target inputs on crops, looking to maximize yields potential and also look at cost saving. And in collaboration with that, we're looking to reduce the negative environmental impact from overuse of blanket spraying chemicals and fertilizers. This is a really quick snapshot of our process. So we source data from a range of different remote sensing capabilities. We predominantly here in the UK are using satellite data, which is the one we're going to focus on today. We also do gather this from UAV data, which is very high resolution. We then take that imagery into our Hummingbird platform, which is our cloud-based artificial intelligence platform, and we perform multiple analytics and deep learning using AI and our own bespoke in-house algorithms to analyze that data and provide actionable insights back to the users via our platform. We're going to run through some of that in more detail with you today, and also how you can then generate variable rate application plans and then put that through to your equipment in field. This is a very quick snapshot of our current commercial capabilities and product services. We have a very wide range of crops that we provide remote sensing and analytical insights into. The main ones that obviously we focus on here in the UK would be cereals, oilseed rape, maize, potatoes, sugar beet, lettuce, and peas and beans. The further afield we go and the other geographies that we look in, we do have a lot more capabilities that are geography specific. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to take you through some of the platform features that as a new user would be available to you when you signed on with Hummingbird via your AgriVista agronomist. So our Farm Vision is our annual satellite subscription. What this provides is 2 to 3 images per week of satellite imagery on a rolling basis throughout the year. That includes NDVI data, photographic and crop variability data. We have also developed our own cloud detection algorithm and masking capability on our platform. What this allows us to do is provide more usable imagery to users throughout the year, especially through the winter months when we all know it can be quite cloudy, being the little island that we are. We also have the analytics dashboard and our field benchmarking and comparison surveys. This allows you to rank your fields in filtering them down just to look at specific crops, but then benchmark them in terms of their performance, looking at the NDVI and biomass scores. So you can very easily identify your top performing fields versus your lower or poor performing fields and use that information to make more data-driven management decisions. This also includes all of the onboarding and multiple croppings in the same season and field, especially when you're going through winter cropping and perhaps you have cover crops in the field and you then want to change that over to spring cropping come the spring next year. That's something that our platform will allow for and facilitate. This is some of the imagery, just of those features that I was describing. So we're looking at our cloud detection tool. So you will see there in that first image how our algorithm has masked out the cloud on that field. So it still allows you to view the rest of the field and understand its variability, areas of good NDVI and biomass versus the areas of lower NDVI and biomass. The second image is of our GAI tool, which Louise is going to come on to in more detail shortly. And that is also showing us the green area index drop-down bar, and you can see in there the field cropping information, the season, and you can input information like the planting drilling date and also the harvest date. These are our leader benchmarking and field comparison surveys. So again, in the top image, it is allowing you to rank your fields in terms of NDVI and biomass performance, and you can filter those down by crop, and you can also filter them down by variety and also drilling date if you wanted to just do a more insightful comparison. The field comparing facility allows you to select fields and crops that you want to look at in more detail. And you can see it also gives you the average NDVI score over time throughout the year. So again, it's a really useful, insightful tool to be able to map and track the performance of your crops in the field this coming season. We also have several ways in which you can export your variable rate application plans once you've generated them. We have a very extensive list of shapefile formats depending on the equipment type you currently have on farm. They all like to speak a different language, so we've ensured that we have catered for that, and you'll be able to download the files in a suitable way to ensure that they work when you pop them into your machinery. Our other option is we have an API integration with the John Deere Ops Center. So you can send your application plans wirelessly to the Ops Center, and then from there straight into your machinery in field. API integrations is something that we're continuing to build on and develop, so there will be more coming. So watch this space for that. I am now going to hand over to Louise, and she and Andrew are going to take you through some of our products.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. I'm just going to share my screen. And there we go. So before I get started, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm Andrew Paynes. I'm an agronomist for Hummingbird, and I'm also an account manager based in the Southwest. As Helen said, we're going to run through some of the autumn products, focusing on those. They're quite timely, the things that are going to be used now. And then just as we get started as well, Helen's run through the features. I'm just going to explain how we find those and navigate through the platform. So before I get into doing a live demo and actually illustrate how you would create an application plan, this is the one I'm going to focus on. So it's a pre-drilling and pre-emergence. So look at this as pre-emergence and non-selective herbicide application plans. I'm sure as it's getting around to that time now of harvest is coming to an end, the oilseed rape has been drilled, and now we're starting to think about drilling cereals and getting our seed beds ready and pre-emergence herbicides. This is a tool we want to talk about in terms of looking at weed pressure and how you can create variable rate plans to help you out with those herbicide applications. So what we are essentially doing here is using NDVI data. So we're looking at monitoring the green in a field, so monitoring the biomass, and being able to use that to identify areas of higher weed pressure within the field. So we can look at this, saying in a field that's being harvested at the moment, we're differentiating from that stubble or that if it's been ploughed or cultivated dark soil versus the green. So we're then going to facilitate that by targeting the application of our herbicide to those greener areas, so where we've got higher weed pressure, whether that be grass weeds or broadleaf weeds. So there's kind of two ways we can look at doing this, either as a spot spray application. So we set up our maximum rate and our off rate, so we'll essentially just be on and off depending on where we set our threshold using NDVI scores. Or also we can look at doing variable rates. So again, if we're looking at, say, a non-selective, we might say we'll put a minimum of 2 litres of glyphosate, for example, as our base rate to make sure that we're covering all of our grass weeds and everything across the field. But then in those areas where we've got a much higher density of weeds, or we've got much higher pressure from broadleaf weeds, we can then apply 4 or 5 litres and go for our higher rates, and then we can have variation in between, again, based on the thresholds that we've set. And then that all comes down to really looking at using our inputs as efficiently as possible. So making sure that we're using them only where we need to use them, minimising product spend, and looking at these specific areas. So what I'm actually going to do now is go into doing sort of a live demonstration of how you can use this and create these plans. But as I said before I do this, what I want to just quickly do is run through the platform and just show you how you sort of navigate around and find all the features that Helen has just talked about. I did see from the last poll there's quite a few of you that have actually used Hummingbird, so you've probably had a go on the platform before. But you'll see that there have been some new changes recently, so it'd be good to just have a look through those and get a bit of a refresh on how it's looking and where to navigate. So if we start, if you're a user, this is exactly what you'd see when you log onto the platform. So this is your farm. Up here we can select if you've got a couple of units which you've put on separately, or a couple of farms, you can do, but in this case we're going to use Manor Farm. So as we can see, all the fields have been onboarded here. You can identify where the ones that are being monitored are and where they aren't. So all of these that have a colour are being monitored. So as we can see, straight away, as I hover over these, we've got the name of the field, we've got the crop and the variety in there, area of the field, the average NDVI score, and then the last survey date. So when we're looking at the last survey date, that was the last usable satellite image. So that was either a clear day or a partially cloudy day. What you won't see in here is the fully cloudy days, because those surveys aren't going to be of use to us for creating a plan. We'll also see that there are some slight changes in colour. So we've got sort of the orangey reddy ones. Now the reason for this is they're based on the average NDVI score. So the lower the score, so the darker the red colour. And if it was in season, so if we had a lot of greenery, you'd see a lot more yellows and green NDVI scores there. But as I'm assuming a lot of this is either being harvested or cultivated, we're down to our really low NDVI scores, which is why they are represented in red. If we then wanted to say go down into a field and have a look at a field exactly, we can either hover over it. So if I zoom into these, I could hover over, click into the field, and it would take me straight there. Or if you wanted to go through your crops, so in this case we'll look at winter oilseed rape, and we've also got our seasons here. So we're in last season just gone. And then we could also search, if we had a lot of fields here, we could type in our field that we're looking for and it would take us straight to it. Before I sort of go into a field and then look at doing a variable rate plan, I will just show you, we do have this tab here on the left-hand side, you can see labeled analytics. So where Helen has talked about within our Farm Vision package, as part of the annual package, you get the analytics tool, which has benchmarking, leaderboard, and field comparisons. This is how you would get into that section. So just using this tab, you can see the drop down here as explained, and then also take it into the compare fields. And at that point, you can then select your fields for comparison. If we go back into this map, we want to select a couple of fields to have a look at, and then I'm going to go into doing this pre-emergence or pre-drilling application plan. So we could either, again, click on a field or pick one from the drop down here. So we've got our field here, and then we've got the banner across the top. So this banner is just identifying when the surveys from Sentinel-2 took place, and whether they were on a clear, cloudy, or partially cloudy day. So if we were to say go back to sort of May time, we can just drag across, and we've got the three symbols here. So we've got, first of all, clear day on 31st of May, fantastic. We've got a clear image and survey from that day. 3rd of June was a cloudy day, so as you'd expect, it's covered in our cloud mask. And then finally, as Helen mentioned, the cloud mask that we've got that covers just partial fields. So in this case, we've got 8%, as we can see there. We click on it, it then identifies where that cloud cover was. We can still apply variable rate application to 92% of that field. And then that 8% under the cloud, we could look to do a flat rate application. Or you may say, we'll wait a couple of days and we'll just use the clear survey from the 26th. But that just gives you the option to make that decision depending on how long the cloudy period has been. So if we want to look at doing a variable rate plan for pre-drilling, let's have a look at this field. So we've selected our field here. It was in oilseed rape. By the 12th of August is the survey I've selected here. Harvest had been done, so we've got a lot of red showing up in this field because a lot of that is going to be bare soil or stubble. Where we've then got these kind of yellower, orange parts around the field, and then also the greenery around the headlands, that's just showing that we've got more green. So the NDVI is higher, more green area is a higher weed density. So that might be volunteers, it might be grass weeds, it might be some other broadleaf weeds, but this is kind of what you would expect, probably crept in from the headland from the season where sprays haven't gone right up to the headland, or where it's been sprayed out earlier, and this is a flush of weed that's come back right on the side of the field. So now we've got this map, we've identified the survey we want to use. We want to now go into creating the application plan, which we can do down here. So we've got this button to create the application plan. And throughout the season, users had nitrogen from Green Area Index and plant growth regulator from Green Area Index, which Louise will run through in a bit. But the one we want to focus on here is the pre-emergence herbicide tool. We select that. If you've already created one and you just want to come back and either make a couple of changes or you're ready to download it, you can just view your current plan. In this case, as I've already created one, there is one there. Or if you wanted to just start again, you can do by creating a new plan in here. In this case, we'll go into using a plan that's already been created, and I'll just talk you through now what you need to do in order. All these sections here, which we just want to fill out, so either talk to your agronomist and sit down with your agronomist to make decisions on what you want to do here. But we start with doing the product rate. So either you may be talking about your pre-emergence or again your non-selective herbicide here. But if we look and say, right, okay, we've got quite a high density around the headlands. We want to go up to 3 litres. You literally just fill that in, and you've got your maximum rate of 3 litres. And then similarly for minimum rate. So because in this case we're looking at doing a variable rate plan, I will leave that at 1. But what you could do is if you wanted to have a spot spray application, so you just want to have on and off, if you were to put that in at 0, you've then essentially got areas that are going to receive 3 litres and areas that will likely be bare soil and will receive nothing at all. In this scenario, I'll leave it at 1. We then go into our application volume. So how much water are you putting in the tank? Just a general. In here, I filled it in with a maximum rate of 200 litres a hectare as part of the application volume. And then we've got the minimum rate here, which you'll see you can't set yourself. Now, the reason for that is to ensure that concentrations aren't changed throughout the application. So with this being a third of the maximum rate of the application volume, that's because a product rate has been set of minimum rate, third of that of the max. So if I was to change that to 0, you can see the minimum rate of water also changes to 0. This scenario, we'll leave it at 1 litre. Then got the option to invert the application. So when we're looking at the pre-emergence and non-selective, this isn't going to be a tool that we would use, but we might use it in some of the other plans that we do later on in spring for maybe some of the nitrogen applications or other capabilities. But for this case, we want our higher rates of herbicide to go to the higher areas of growth, so the higher weed density. So in this case, we won't tick that box, but if you wanted higher rates to go to lower growth, you can do just by simply clicking the box. So a couple of pieces left. So this is where we set our NDVI threshold. So this is where we're essentially setting where we want our rates to either start and where we want them to finish as a maximum rate. So in this case, we've got the left-hand side of here is 0, so we can move that along. In this case, we'll set it to be just below an NDVI of 0.2. So what we're saying is anything under 0.2 is likely going to be bare soil. So we don't want to have anything applied to that area. You'll see the map changes colour to correlate with what we're doing here. And then similarly, exactly the same with the maximum rate. We're saying where do we want that maximum rate of 3 to kind of kick in for the rest of it. Again, we can move that, but we'll stick it sort of at around 0.3 NDVIs. We're saying anything over that, we have got some weed density in there. And then this gap in the middle is where we're going to have our variable rates. The final piece that we need to do here now is just looking at banding. So the banding is looking at how many different variations we want to have between that 0 rate and our maximum rate. And so it very much could be dependent on equipment. We can go up to 10 bands, so you'd have 10 different rates of product and application volume in that field. I think some of maybe the older equipment maybe not be able to deal with quite so many changes in bands. So for this scenario, we'll put 3 bands in place. And then by clicking next, what we're doing is taking all of that information that we've just inputted, and it's now creating that into an application plan, which is what you can see here. So we've chosen our 3 bands, one of which is 0 because of where we set our 0 banding. So we can see best part of 4 hectares of this field is going to receive 0. We've then got our first band here. So then we've got nearly 5 hectares, which is going to receive our rate of 1 litre a hectare, so our lower rate. And then finally, just under a hectare for band 2, sort of in the areas we were expecting around the headlands is going to receive a higher rate. So if we just wanted to check that, we've got this preview button here, which we can click. You'll see it takes us back to the NDVI survey, and these green areas here correlate with our higher areas or higher areas that are going to receive the higher rates. So once we're happy with this plan, we can save that. And this is quite a useful tool in terms of looking at the application details from a management perspective, because looking at this field, we now know exactly how much herbicide we need to carry out this. So if you've not ordered the herbicide in yet, then you can do these plans and then put your order in, and you know exactly what you need. Then gives you information on your average rate, total application volume, so how much water you're going to need. If you're going out on a large area and doing lots of fields at the same time, take a bowser with you. You can work out what sort of volumes of water you need to take with you to do the job. And then the final point we've just got on here is number of data points, and that's just helping to understand whether the equipment will be able to deal with the file package. But in this case, we've set it at only 3 bands, so we should be okay with the majority of equipment. The final part we then need to do here is downloading this into the equipment, and this is exactly like Helen has run through. We've got a couple of options. We can either send straight to the JD Ops Center, from where at that point you can drop it down into your equipment and go off and start the application, or download it to a device, either as a generic shapefile, which works with most equipment, or click on the equipment list. And as Helen said, we've catered for all different types of languages or file types within that. So that was everything I wanted to explain on this side. So I'm going to now pass over to Louise, who's going to talk through some of the GAI and PGR products.
Share my screen. Everyone see that? Yeah. So I'm going to run through our green area index model and the applications that can be made from that. So I'm Louise. I'm a regional account manager for Hummingbird. I'm based in North Lincolnshire, but I work closely with AgriVista, helping them with their clients that are using our platform as their remote sensing platform. So Green Area Index is an industry recognised metric to measure and manage OSR canopy. Hummingbird have built their own algorithm to measure Green Area Index. This is unique to the industry. The algorithm was trained with thousands of annotated data sets, which were collected and ground truthed by a team of agronomists. We then migrated that to satellite and recalibrated it with a different resolution to make it more commercially viable. So the first instance that we'll use the Green Area Index in is to inform our PGR applications. So from satellite, we can accurately measure the Green Area Index scores across the whole field and tailor the applications accordingly. So this season, for example, it's a good example because a lot of rape crops have gone in early. There's been good weather conditions and perhaps a lower flea beetle pressure. So we're already seeing some good, strong rape crops. And it's really important to manage the canopy size. We want to reduce risks of the canopy becoming too big and lodging, reducing the availability of light for photosynthesis, or the canopy becoming too big and lodging later on. But also we want to avoid applying PGRs where the GAI is less than 1, as this would also have a negative impact. On the bottom of this slide, I've just got the Carex label, just as an example. So you'll see on the label, it gives you the product rates according to the GAI values. So I'm now going to go into the platform to show how this would work. So here we've got the NDVI layer on one of our OSR fields. If I then change that to the green area index view, you can see how the field is gridded up into 25 by 25 metre grids across the field, and each grid has its own green area index score. So the darker green colours are giving you the higher GAI, and lighter is a slightly lower GAI score. You've also got an average score for the field, which is 1.73. So if you weren't VR ready, you could use the average GAI score to guide your applications. And then you've also got a breakdown here of how much of that field falls into the different GAI values. So we're going to use this plan to create an example PGR application plan. So if I go to gridded, I have made a plan already, so we'll just go into that and edit that. So the information that's required from the grower or the agronomist is the application volume, so the water volumes, the min and max rates, and then the product min rate, and the max will be defined according to your application volumes. You then enter a GAI value against the product rate. So this is when you'd refer back to your product label. So I've put a GAI value of 0.8 against the minimum product rate and a GAI score of 2 against the max product rate. And I'm going to deselect this so it won't apply the minimum rate below the GAI values below the minimum. So if we then preview that, so you can see, if I just go back to the GAI layer, so you can see you've got higher GAI in this top left corner and a lower GAI in this area to the east of the field. If we then go to the plan, you can see how that correlates. So we've got a higher PGR application up here, so 1.4 litres a hectare, and then we're dropping down to sort of just under a litre per hectare in the eastern part of the field. On the left-hand side, the graph shows how that PGR is applied according to the GAI scores. And then you've got this output box here, so the total amount of PGR required, your average rates, and your total water volumes. If you did want a minimum rate across the whole field, you can go back a step and just select that box. If we preview again, you'll see how that's now altered that plan accordingly. I've just got a slide as well just to show the ROI on that product. Bear with me. So this was a field from last season. The grower used Hummingbird's VR PGR product. If they had flat rate sprayed, they would have been looking at 1 litre a hectare. Instead, their average rate was 0.7 litre a hectare, which saved them £4.50 a hectare. So it was a good saving. The next product I'm going to talk around is the VR nitrogen product, again based on green area index. So from all the science from the likes of ADAS, we know that the target GAI score is 3.5 units at flowering. And because we can accurately measure the green area index score across the whole field, we know then how much nitrogen we need to apply to reach that 3.5 units. We'll also take into account soil nitrogen supply and efficiency recovery. But because we know it takes 50 kilograms of nitrogen to build a unit of GAI, we can really tailor that nitrogen application accordingly to minimise product spend and optimise the canopy and therefore yield. So again, I'll go back into the platform. So there's the NDVI layer. We'll have a look at the green area index layer. You'll be able to see it's quite a variable field, and then we'll go to create application plan and to the nitrogen. We'll go and edit our current plan. So the user or the agronomist needs to put in the soil nitrogen supply and the efficiency recovery. We'll then put in a realistic target yield for that field. You can, if you want, put in a minimum and maximum rate of nitrogen, so like a cap and collar, but that's at your discretion. If we then press continue, the second phase, you can then choose how many splits you want to make on this field. So I should have said we'll use a survey before the onset of spring growth. So we're using one towards the end of January for this plan. It's completely up to the user how many splits they want to make and how they want to attribute the splits. So for this example, I'm going to put 60% of my nitrogen on in my first split and 40% on in my second split. You then need to tell the platform if you're using a solid or liquid application and the analysis of the nitrogen product you're using. So for the example, I'm using a solid application with 34% analysis, and the same again in the second application. If we then press preview, so you've got how the nitrogen is spread according to the GAI scores. If we go onto the map, you'll also see, again, if I just make that a bit bigger, if I preview the GAI scores, so again, you've got higher scores in the northwest corner of the field and lower scores in the east area of the field. And then if we go back to the nitrogen plan, you can see how that correlates. So we've got a lower nitrogen application in the northwest and then a higher nitrogen application, sort of 180 kilograms per hectare in the eastern part of the field. You've then got your application details split out as per the splits. So your total amounts of fertilizer and the average rates. And then you can also download those plans individually and use them as you make those separate splits. I'm just going to show now a case study from another user that used VR tools. So this field, you can just see the different layers. So we've got photographic, NDVI, and green area index. These three images show throughout the season, using the nitrogen, the VR nitrogen, how that canopy has evened up. You can see the left-hand side is quite variable, the different shades of green across the field. But once we've got later on in the season, you can see it's a really nice, even, homogeneous crop. This is the figures related to that. So farm standard approach versus canopy managed approach. You can see there was a reduction in the total amount of nitrogen applied, quite a large reduction, but a very negligible difference in yield. So 4.19 in the farm standard approach and 4.18 in the canopy managed approach, which gave a return on investment of just over £100. Again, this is taking figures from some fields with split field trials, so using a farm standard approach versus Hummingbird's canopy managed approach. And you can see they all resulted in a good reduction in nitrogen. The largest one saving just over 60% of them. On average, a saving of £68 per hectare. But what was really important is that all these fields were located in an NVZ, and so reducing the total N applied by 29% not only was a cost saving, but also an environmental benefit. I've just put on the screen now the details of the UK sales team. As I said, I'm based sort of northeast. Helen is in the south and southeast. Andrew is southwest, and then we've got Jeff, who's also on the call, in the Midlands and Wales. We're now going to open up for a Q&A session. I'll also just let Andrew explain how to collect basis and Lorenzo points.
Yeah, thanks, Louise. So I'll just share my screen again, so you've got my details there. So there we go. That should load. So for this meeting, there are 2 basis points, and then there's just 1 Enroso point available. So if you could send me your name, membership number, and then your postcode, I can get those forms filled in and sent off. So I'll just leave my email address there for a second, but if not, we can put this email address out afterwards, and then just send your details to there. That'd be fantastic.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks, Louise. Thanks, Helen. I think that was a really useful run through on the platform. Hopefully everyone's got a good idea of how it works now. So we'll go into the Q&A. So there is a few questions. The first one from Mitch is, do you have any blockchain platforms that integrate your data for compliance and proof of sustainability metrics? Do either of you have any response on that one? Yep.
So at the moment, we are currently working on API integrations with the likes of Gatekeeper and Muddy Boots. So our application plans will be able to feed into those platforms. For the time being, we're very much advocating and working alongside agronomists to be able to generate these plans so they do fit in with compliance.
Yeah. Excellent. Excellent. The next one, I think we've answered that in the in the presentation, but are you able to produce a VR map when the cloud covered areas are masked out? I'm happy to take that one. So obviously we saw on the platform that we can produce the variable rate applications with a cloudy image or partly cloudy image. What we can also do is we can either wait for a following image or use an image just prior to that one. As we're getting them sort of every 2 to 3 days, there should be an image reasonably close. Would you add anything to that, Andrew?
Covered it exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, good. The next one, I don't know whether Louise, you want to take this one. How easy is it to get a GAI assessment on my fields?
Has dropped off. Let's blame the internet connection. How easy is it to get a GAI assessment on my fields? It's very easy. If you speak to your Agravista agronomist and get set up on our platform and you sign up for our Farm Vision satellite package, you will get rolling weekly data coming through for your fields on the farm. And you will then be able to select the one that's most representative or with the closest date to when you want to generate and apply your PGRs or nitrogen.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that if you wanted to put a field on there, generally you would have a GAI assessment the same day, or if not the next morning, so they're pretty quick. I'll come back to the pricing one. I'll just run through some of the other questions, but one interesting question which I get asked quite a lot is when looking at GAI, can the programme just distinguish between oilseed rape crop and a companion crop where it's being grown? I don't know who wants to take that one.
So yeah, I guess actually looking at the following question as well, about weeds and companion cropping. What GAI does is, as you would do when you go into a field, and whether you're using an app or whether you're doing it by sight, you're assessing that field for its GAI and it's taking the biomass of that. So what we can't say that we're distinguishing between companion crop and the oilseed rape crop and a weed, but at the time that we're wanting to be using this, saying that, you know, I don't know, coming out of January or into early February, the GAI is useful and is accurate for up to stem extension, and you'd like to think that the majority of weeds hopefully have had their applications of herbicide by then, so we're at our cleanest point. So yes, ideally we want it to be the oilseed rape crop that we're using for GAI, but it's not distinguished between the two. And similarly, if you're using, say, like a Clearfield variety, your application of chloride or whatever at the moment would have been applied by then, in which case the weeds have died back, and then we are just really focusing on that oilseed rape crop. So I think it's important to look at this as much as we can use it for planning. The timing of actually creating the application plans is probably important to do, just as you're coming in to think about your nitrogen applications.
Excellent. Somebody's asked about the Velport study that you brought up on the presentation. How many hectares was that over? Have you got that to hand, Louise?
I'm just having a look. I don't think I've got it to hand, but more than happy to share the case study afterwards. We can.
Yeah, okay. So final question was about pricing. Do one of you want to take that question?
Based on for all the products is a per hectare per season basis. You're not tied into any subscription. So you could sign, so Farm Vision is a prerequisite, which gets your basic rolling imagery, and you can build on top of that. So you might want to add on to your Farm Vision your GAI VRN, or you might want to use one of our desiccations at the end of the season. So you can really pick what you want to do. So it's very flexible pricing on a per hectare basis.
Yeah, excellent. Do any of you want to add anything else to any of those questions? I think we've covered off all the questions that have come in.
Some other questions that, you know, we've still got some time. Happy to answer.
Yes. So we just had one come in. With linseed desiccation guide, saw on Twitter. Was that something you guys have put up on Twitter about?
We put up linseed desiccation. We also had on there a news press release from CPM, just to collaborate with that. But yeah, LIN certification is still available. It is very flexible and allows the user to set the threshold to be able to say if you want to do a variable rate spray across the field based on the NDVI and biomass scores. So if you know you've got an area of the field that has got a higher biomass and would benefit from a higher rate of desiccant to help and ease harvesting, that option is available and is of interest. Again, speak to your AgriVista agronomist, and that's something that we could look to get set up.
Perfect. Perfect. A question's just popped up about spacings on oilseed rape. This customer's had wide row spacing on their oilseed rape, and they said that they had some issues with the GAI. Is that something that's improved? I've certainly not seen any issues in the east and southeast myself. So.
Work on OSR, whether it's drilled conventionally or on a wide row system, that won't impact spacing of the OSR.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say I've got several growers on wide row spacing and not seen any issues myself this season. So excellent. Well, I think that's caught all the questions. So if unless Helen, have you got anything extra you'd want to say?
No, just to thank everybody for attending this webinar. I hope you found it useful and informative. If you want to look at this in more detail and onboard your farm, then yeah, please reach out to your AgriVista agronomist, and we can look to get that set up with you.
Excellent. So I'd like to thank everybody for joining, and thanks Helen, Louise, and Andrew for showing us the platform. Hopefully, it's given everybody a really good insight into how intuitive the platform is, and how easy some of the products are to use. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining, and please feel free to get in contact.
Thanks, Graeme.
Brilliant.